days of Halloween.
I'm not sure if anybody would believe me, and I don't care if you do or not. If you've ever heard of anybody named Mr. Pickett, surely enough, you'd have to believe me. I first came across Mr. Pickett when I was 6 years old. My mother would take my brother and I to the playground in our hometown. Mr. Pickett showed up one day, appearing from the woods that was near the playground. He was a man in a pig costume, wearing overalls. Anyway, Mr. Pickett may seem fun and normal at first, but he's far from it. He's actually a nightmare that you cannot escape or wake from. He is the reason that some children can sleep at night, and the reason that others are mysteriously missing. I've had nightmares about him up until I was 10, and then they recently returned. I just want to warn any parents out there whose children ever heard or spoke the name Mr. Pickett. He may seem imaginary, and you may not be able to see him, but I assure you he is real, and he is kidnapping children all over the world. Please, help me stop Mr. Pickett. This incident occurred approximately 2 or 3 years ago. A short time before a friend introduced me to the same exact place in the summertime. We had a group of friends who all met at a summer house in the mountains upstate. Usually, a day or two after school had ended. It was a generally super safe place, but sadly was near a small town who had quite a bit of crime, and the town was approximately 10 minutes away by car. We were completely surrounded by forest. A few miles away was a prison. We usually never felt uncomfortable walking alone at night or playing manhunt in the late night hours. But unfortunately, everything changed in just one moment, and I am thankful I was not here to witness it all take place. So a few years ago, we were all playing manhunt in the very late night hours, about 11 o'clock at night. We had about 8 people in the game, and the 2 teams set off into the darkness of the nearby forest to hide from the hunter. The hunter, or killer, I would prefer not sharing the real name, so we will refer to her as Sophia, set off to search for the players. One person, who I will refer to as James, decided before not to play and went to his house, which was about 3 car lengths from the starting point of the game, and went to bed. About 20 minutes into the game, Sophia noticed a dark figure in black running across the field to the opposite tree, and she, assuming it was someone she had to catch, came bolting after the person, ignoring a flash of silver in their hand. As she reached the person, she had directly bumped into them and was shoved into the ground before the person quickly dove into the safety of the trees and back into the woods. Sophia, in confusion, called each of the players back to the starting point to ask which one of them was the person who was running. No one had answered, but one of the players, who we will call Alex, noticed the man too. Alex pointed out that no one on the entire camp was that tall, which sent worry into Sophia's chest. The group decided it was best to call it a night, went to bed and locked their doors. In the morning, James had woken up to find his door handle busted and food scattered all over the floor. He quickly told the owner of our summer homes, and Alex, the owner, and Adam investigated the inside of the house. Alex holding a large knife and Adam holding an axe, but the person was gone. Strangely, no one ever notified the authorities on this, and what I found interesting is that we all continued to go back to that summer home regardless of the incident, and even left most of our stuff there waiting for us each year. So, super creepy tall person who came out of the woods, let's not ever meet again, and if we do, we're gonna whip your ass. Last year, a friend and I went on a long road trip to New Mexico. We camped most of the way, and our first night we got to camp, we spent in the Jefferson National Forest at a campsite in West Virginia. We had found some pamphlets for campsites at a gas station, and we drove out to a place called White Rocks Campground, which was like a 25-plus mile up a dirt road into the mountains. We were in the boonies. On our way in, we saw no cars, except for one truck that was behind us for maybe 15 minutes, but then turned down another road. We passed a huge coal factory with a sign that had said 62 days since an on-site incident. The only people we saw on our drive were standing on the side of the dirt road, huddled around a plastic bin that was on fire. It was all so odd, but we were so excited about camping and being on this trip, we were just laughing about how weird it was, instead of not being worried about having no cell phone reception or being so deep into the mountains. We finally get to the campground, and it's completely empty. Not a single car or person to be seen, and the campground had about 30 sites. We drove around all of them trying to spot anyone, but when we realized it was just us, we picked a random site and decided to just stick it out. We got out of the car and stood there and just listened. The silence was startling. I love being in the woods. I've never felt scared or intimidated to be out there, but there was such a different feeling this time. There were no bird sounds. It was just thick, silent woods. It was getting dark quick, and we decided to start a fire and put up the tent, try to get comfortable. My friend was in charge of the tent, and I was putting together the fire. While we were trying to go about our business, we would both just stop and listen. My friend even made the point that if anyone was to approach us, at least there were crunchy leaves everywhere for us to hear it coming. It felt like someone was watching us. It was the first time in my life I've understood what that feeling is. I had goosebumps. I wanted to leave, but I kept my cool for my friend. The fire is started. The tent is up, and the sleeping bags are ready. The sun was set. Sitting around the fire together, the darkness seemed to close in on us now. It felt suffocating. My friend brought out a book to read aloud and made us feel more comfortable. While she was reading, I grabbed my headlamp and would occasionally turn it on and look around me. I had the feeling since we pulled into the campsite that someone was there in the woods. Pitch black, and our fire was a beacon. We decided to go to sleep, but that we would pack up early in the morning and get the fuck out of here. We put out the fire, and I decided to grab the one knife we had on us that was still in the car, and kept it beside me in the tent. After getting into our sleeping bags, my friend pulls out her cell phone to see if she had any reception. Nothing. She tried to dial her boyfriend just in case, and I remember saying out loud, "We have no reception out here, it won't work." We laid there in the silence, repeatedly watching her phone trying to dial out and then disconnect. Suddenly, about 20 feet off to the left of our tent, footsteps. These weren't footsteps that quietly built up. These were footsteps like someone had been standing behind the tree near our tent and started walking toward us. The crunchy leaves were doing their job. We froze. We just stared at each other, eyes wide. The footsteps continued to walk toward the tent, then turned to go behind for maybe a couple yards, and then stopped. Silence again. Heavy, booted footsteps with the same pattern that would be a person walking, not a bear or a deer. My friend grabbed my knife that was laying by my bag and grabbed her headlamp. Unzips the tent and gets out and stands in front of the tent, knife out, looking around the area. She's a goddamn warrior. It was maybe 45 seconds of silence as we listened for more footsteps or voices. And I could see the light from my friend's headlamp dashing around the trees, but there was nothing there. At this point, she stuck her head back in the tent and said, "We're getting the fuck out of here." We then proceeded to, in record time, pack up everything, and in 10 minutes we were out of there. I'm amazed about it, thinking back on it, how we didn't lose our heads, keeping our cool while we packed, but internally screaming in terror. We only had our headlamps on, and the whole time we were packing up, I kept thinking about how the hill people would grab us and pull us into the darkness, and we would be completely helpless if they did. It didn't feel like it was really happening. Maybe that's why we were almost completely calm while packing. There's no way this is actually happening on our first night camping. We must just be freaking ourselves out. But I still felt like we were being watched. We sped out of there once done. Now here is where the hill people hunting us was confirmed. As we pulled out of the campsite, there were 2 black, dirty trucks pulled off to the side of the road, hidden in the trees, but almost still completely visible. They had definitely not been there when we pulled in earlier, and the closest residential homes were 15 miles away. We didn't see anyone around them, but we didn't stop to look either. We ended up finding a motel and staying the night there, and we proceeded to tell the owner the entire story, who was amazingly sweet and comforting. I will remember every detail of that night for the rest of my life. The feeling like we were being watched, hearing the footsteps so closely, so suddenly, and the black trucks of the people who were hunting us.